Now, the noise has died down over the course of the last 24, 48 hours. But once again, it's ramped up today because Eddie Howe has been speaking to the media for the first time since the end of last season. And it comes off the back of a disappointing pre-season game in Glasgow where they were beaten by Brendan Rodgers' Celtic 4-0. So not only have you got the noise about Alexander Isak this week, the disappointment of missing out on Hugo Ekitike, but suddenly you've got a poor performance as well, which won't go down with the home fans. It won't go down with Eddie Howe and his backroom team as well. So you just get the sense that they're in a bit of a malaise at the moment. There's a lot of negativity around the football club, and this has been a really tough window. So let's see what the Newcastle manager had to say when asked about Alexander Isak and the situation with regards to his future. Here's what he said after that game with Celtic.
Very disappointed. You haven't got more signings for your goal now.
Yeah, we wanted more. And I think from my perspective, when you're going into pre-season, you want your squad together from the first day and you want to work on everything that you need to work on. It's difficult to do that later on in pre-season because it takes time for our work to feed into the players. But whatever happens, happens, and we have to adapt. So am I confident? I'm confident we will try our very, very best to do it. I've got no guarantees beyond that. My wish was for us to do our business early, and we certainly tried, but it wasn't to be. We've had a frustrating time in terms of losing targets to other clubs. I have to be very open with that. That's happened on several occasions, but you just have to accept it. In order for a transfer to really work, in my opinion, the player has to be desperate to come to your club, and if we don't get that, the transfer doesn't work. So we're seeking players that are good enough, that are desperate to come, and that can make the difference, that they're on short supply for us. But we're confident that we can try and get some more players in to strengthen the depth of the squad. We're certainly aware that we need to.
He's often very open and honest, isn't he, in his press conferences, Eddie Howe? That's why we like listening to him. But often you hear a manager there just say, well, look, no, he's not for sale, he's staying. So why wouldn't he just say that? By not guaranteeing that he's going to be there, it just opens up more questions, doesn't it?
Yeah, I always remember, based on your question there, I always remember one thing that Ralph Hasenhüttl said when he came into Southampton as the new Southampton boss, because he was asked in the press conference, can you guarantee that you'll keep Southampton in the Premier League? And his response was, if you want a guarantee, buy a washing machine. There are no guarantees
they're not
in football.
Guaranteed.
And Eddie Howe absolutely couldn't sit there in front of the media today after that game and say, I guarantee that Alexander Isak will be a Newcastle player on September the 2nd. And of course, he knows that whilst he wants to keep the player, and he said today the player's happy at Newcastle, he's excited about the challenge of Champions League football, he knows that there is this noise. Now, Newcastle hold the cards at the moment because he does have 3 years left on his current Newcastle deal. So therefore, it's not like he's into the last year or two where it becomes a little bit easier for the player to agitate for a move. He knows he's got a long-term contract in the North East and he's still not going anywhere. But the fact that he was with the team in Austria and then potentially travelling to Celtic for the game, but with all of this noise, Eddie Howe has decided absolutely it's not the right thing to do for you to be a part of this squad. If you're not going to play, then I don't want you sat in the stand with all the noise surrounding you at the moment. So therefore, it's best for the club and for you personally if we send you back home. And this is going to be a real, tussle over the course of the next few days and weeks, because Eddie Howe's going to have to get Alexander Isak focused on playing for Newcastle, focused on training and getting himself ready and fit for the new season. But of course, it feels like, based on what's going on, this noise is going to continue and continue.
Well, it's interesting as well, isn't it? Because, for example, Morgan Gibbs-White, there's a lot of noise about him. He played a half for Nottingham Forest today in their game against Monaco. Whereas Eddie Howe's taken a different tack with Isak. So again, that'll just get people thinking.
He did make reference to the fact that he wasn't playing because he wanted to manage his body, manage the load on his body in the early stages of pre-season. Now, Alexander Isak's the type of player that would probably start pretty much every game for Newcastle. Premier League matches, Champions League matches, and he has had a few niggling injuries over the course of the last year or two. So therefore, they're just protecting him and looking after him. And that's something Eddie Howe's always done. As a player, he suffered with knee problems himself, and he had to be managed. He couldn't train on certain days, but to get the best out of him on a Saturday, they had to protect him and look after his body. So that was one of the things that Eddie Howe said after the game today. It's not just about the noise surrounding his future. We need to protect him and look after him as well.
And just quickly before we finish, so if Liverpool, say, get Ekitike, if Arsenal get Gyökeres, both of those looking like that could well happen, who's going to be able to afford £150 million for Alexander Isak?
Well, Newcastle will say no one, thankfully. We know there's been a lot of noise from other sides, and there's been teams in Europe that have looked at him. There's been some reports this week that have even suggested that the Saudi Arabia Pro League sides have been looking at possibly taking Alexander Isak, but he's working for PIF, who own Newcastle at the moment, so that one seems to be very unlikely. I think with all of this noise, it will be a case of, right, let's just let things die down and let's get you focusing on what you do, and that's scoring goals and playing for Newcastle United. And as Eddie has said today, he's focused on the football club. He enjoys playing with his teammates. They've just signed Anthony Elanga, one of his international teammates as well. So the fact they've got that partnership there for this season, that will be a big thing that keeps Alexander Isak at the football club. It's just one to keep an eye on. And you know, in transfer windows, things twist and turn in one direction and then another, and you get the feeling this will be something very similar. Just on Hugo Ekitike, we know that Liverpool are very relaxed about the situation at the moment. They are progressing with their talks, which centre around a package of about £75 million. We know that Eintracht Frankfurt are very meticulous in the way they do business, and Liverpool are relaxed with that situation. They're not rushing to get this one done over the line in the next 24 to 48 hours. They're having a dialogue, they're communicating. Hugo Ekitike was involved for Eintracht Frankfurt today, but only on the bench, didn't get onto the pitch. What does that mean? Who knows? But we'll keep talking about it, that's for sure.
We will. Thanks, Mark. I'm glad you came back from Bournemouth.
Just to see you.